Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone had a happy Thanksgiving. I know we're all getting back in the office and back in the groove, so I appreciate you guys hopping on this webinar today. We'll get started here in just maybe 30 seconds or so until the waiting room slows a bit and get started. All right. Looks like the waiting room slowed a little bit, so I'll jump in here and first welcome everyone to the NASEO Wildfire Forum webinar series. If you're unfamiliar with these I'll explain a little bit more in depth, but this is 3 of 4 we've done, or 3 of 4 we're planning to do. Would love to do more, but always open to other ideas. Before we jump into kind of the meat of this discussion, I just want to start with some opening remarks and some housekeeping items. First, we are recording these wildfire webinars, so for the folks that can't join us, I know some people are taking an extended Thanksgiving holiday break. Jealous. We'll be able to see this. Beyond that, we encourage everyone to kind of join us on camera. During the discussion portion of these, as I've talked about or will talk about, these are meant to be more discussion based. We'll have some speakers. We're going to hear from Peter, John, and Eric, but there's also going to be some opportunity to kind of chat with your state colleagues and, of course, ask those gentlemen some questions. Beyond that, if you have something to add to the conversation, again, this is a pretty informal group. This is a smaller size group, so if you like to put things in the chat, like to raise your hand or just come off mute, we're open to all of those options. All right, we'll dive in here. I'll answer this first question. What is this wildfire forum all about? I know some of you are familiar with these, some of you might be attending for the first time. Just to take a step back, like I mentioned, this is webinar 3 of 4. The other ones touched on wildfire risk assessment, as well as wildfire mitigation plans, and this one's really going to be focusing on innovative technology. So with these, the hope is first, these are open to all SLTT partners and communities, so not just state energy offices who NASEO represents, but all partners in this. Beyond that, the hope is really just for this to not just be an information push, but we want this to be kind of an environment for honest questions and dialogue and conversation. So encourage that there, but really trying to take the lessons learned from the West and push them eastward. I know we're in making sure states are ahead of the curve on a lot of these issues. I think we're certainly seeing the threat move from west to east, so that's why I mentioned that. But this is just an opportunity to kind of best practice exchange and throw questions out, and again have some earnest conversations. So the objectives for this specific call, as I mentioned, are we'll really focus on topically wise innovative wildfire technology. Really hoping for some action-oriented conversation, but really we'll dive into implementation of some of these technologies, how states have done it, how are they doing it currently, and what can be done in the future. So I'll pause there and run quickly through the agenda that we're going to cover today, just to give you an idea. So we're going to start, as we do with these forums, with a quick Menti, just to get the conversation rolling. I know some people don't like the camera exchange, so sometimes the virtual is a good way to warm folks up to that conversation. After that, we're going to hear from Eric. He's going to show us a little bit about the online platform the Wisconsin DNR has created. Really pretty brand new, actually, and has some really neat features. He's going to talk about a bit about those capabilities and potentially how that can be replicated in your state. We'll hear from Peter, and he's going to chat a little bit about advanced reconductoring and kind of avenues for implementation that we've seen with utilities and kind of what the role of states can be in that. And then we'll hear from John, and he's going to share a little bit about the implementation of some additional wildfire technology for small and rural utilities, primarily through 40101D. So that's kind of an overview of the hour and a half we have today. Before we jump into the Menti, I wanted to pull up just briefly this resource from the Department of Energy. Bear with me here. which is going to be kind of a bit of a model for the discussion today, kind of put some not parameters, but a little bit in a way. One, to plug this resource, I know especially some of the energy security leads are fairly familiar with this. It is their DOE CESER's wildfire mitigation approach. For folks that maybe aren't as familiar, this document provides kind of a framework for evaluating proposed investments across the energy sector. So kind of all about prioritization, which I know many of us are familiar with. But kind of wanted to draw your attention to Appendix C. This is all about risk mitigation measures. They have these risk mitigation measures for each hazard, but of course, we're here to talk about wildfires. So just drawing your attention to this. We're going to be covering some of these technologies. That's why I bring it up. So just I'll throw it in the chat, but kind of wanted to resurface this resource. As you can see, it's primarily focused on electrical mitigation measures, which you can see in this column right here. But a good resource. Of course, there's flood and some other hazards, like I mentioned, but we'll be covering reconductoring and some of these other mitigation measures. So I can stop. All right, we're back. And I'll get Camille to pull up the Menti and we'll throw it in the chat to get started. And for folks that may not be, oh, look, Camille already threw it in the chat. How helpful. And Campbell. Great. I've got a whole team here. For folks that may not be familiar with Menti, feel free to either join on your phone. As you can see at kind of the top of the screen, it has that code, so you can just type that code in, or as Camille put in the chat, just go to that link there. But for this particular Menti, it's going to be 2 quick questions for folks that haven't done this one. It's kind of a ranked choice. I know in our all hazards call, we just kind of do more open-ended questions. So you'll basically kind of drag the technology that you're aware that has been deployed in your state. If you're not familiar or not familiar if a specific one has been deployed, no need to drag and drop, but just curious, looking to get some eyes on kind of what's been out there and what's been popular among the states. So I'll give folks a second to answer that. Seeing fire-resistant poles jump to the lead and reconductoring. I'm also curious, I might call on a couple folks. Obviously, this is intentionally kind of broad. It could be if you're aware that utilities have obviously deployed these technologies, or I might put a twist on it and who's out there? Let's see. Ed, I might call on you since I see you and I think you're on camera. If you've answered this, do you know if your office was supporting any of these technologies, or was it kind of other state agencies involved in this?
You talking to me?
Yeah, I'm talking to you.
Um, we, as far as I'm aware of everything, we were not involved with this.
Gotcha. And just curious, did you choose any of these or rank any of these?
I did not.
You did not. Oh, shoot. Come on, Ed. Well, I might twist the question on you. Which one would you like to maybe hear more about, or maybe know the least amount about?
Honestly, I think the reconductoring has a lot of positive, it could have a lot of positive effects going forward, just because you're utilizing the infrastructure that is currently available with newer technology.
Thanks for that, Ed. And thanks for letting me put you on the spot. You're always a good sport about it.
Oh, you're going to pay for that.
uh, I see Megan's joined us. Hey, Megan. Thanks for joining us.
Hey Sarah, sorry I was running late, but I love that you got out the old risk mitigation guidebook. Nice
Yeah.
work.
I
Like
I
it.
wanted
Although we need more wildfire in there now.
I know, well, I don't know if you jumped on at the right time, but I just plugged your resource and want to give you an opportunity if you have anything to add on the risk mitigation approaches guidance. I know there's a good little section in there, but certainly opportunity in the appendix, we called out, and that's kind of where these answer choices came from.
Yeah, but any feedback on that too? I mean, as I took a fresh look at it after a year of not looking at it, I thought, boy, I think we could actually update this guy, and we're looking to update both the risk assessment guidebook and the risk mitigation guidebook over the next year with some regional tips and tricks and some cybersecurity specific stuff. So I also think it's a great opportunity to learn from like these webinars and think about different innovative mitigation techniques that folks could be trying. So thanks for bringing that up. It was great to see it. That's right when I jumped on because I was running late from another meeting.
It's good to recirculate some of those resources. One, I'll just make an early plug as I was looking through it. A lot of good stuff in there. In regards to some of the hazards, some of them are specific to electricity. So would love to see some liquid fuels, natural gas, maybe expansion and a 2.0 version.
Yeah, I thought so too. Like, why don't we have any mitigation that has to do with natural gas and petroleum? Surely there are things that you can do. And we
Mhm.
know that we've actually had those real life situations happen. So, yep, I agree. We need to take fresh eyes on that.
Yep, there's always more work to do. Awesome. Well, it looks like the fire resistant poles is leading the charge with reconductoring and covered conductors coming in third. All right, you can move on to the next question. Oh, and people are already there. So what wildfire technology would you like to learn more about and why? I'm seeing some fire spread modeling, pre-treated assets in the fire path, anything that has been funded or deployed with 401D grants. Great call out there. Obviously, that's a tool a tool a lot of states have been utilizing and are continuing to utilize to fund a lot of these technologies. AI cameras, are they worth the cost? I'll tell you, Campbell and I were recently at GridSecCon in Las Vegas, and there was some really fascinating like physical security cameras that are out there, but they certainly do have a cost associated with a lot of these, and begs the question also like detection versus mitigation, and so we can dive into some of those conversations. But fair point. Ooh, advanced reconductoring. Do I know a guy for you? You'll hear from Peter soon. But yeah, the more and more I dive into it and I hear Peter and others talk about reconductoring, it is um, certainly an interesting option. I think we're seeing deployed in states more and more. All right. Well, we'll stop it there. Thanks for humoring me and doing the Menti. I'm a personal fan of that. I think it gets the conversation going, gets people loose. So we are going to roll right into our first presentation. We'll hear from Eric Martin with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. Before I pass it over to Eric, we're going to have some Q&A portion. We've allocated some Q&A portion after each speaker and also a portion of time just to have some, I might be asking you state some questions. Feel free to jump in, ask some questions to me or others. But just wanted to put a plug in there. So with that, Eric, I will pass things over to you. He's going to share a little bit about the landscape risk map, and he's just going to go off the cuff, no slides here. So I'll pass it over to you, Eric.
Well, we'll see. I've got some things that I'm going to try to screen share, but do you have my audio? All right. So it's good to see a few familiar faces from the last time you guys kind of were together in August, or last time I saw you, I guess, was late August. So Megan, good to see you again. Sarah, same. So my name's Eric Martin. I'm the Forest Fire Suppression Specialist for the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. A lot of what I do for the state is, I'm a nationally qualified division supervisor, so I do a lot of operations in the wildland suppression arena. Specifically for the state, I specialize in fire behavior, fire weather, a lot of our fire IT solutions and GIS type solutions, driving the business needs for that, and kind of help coordinate a lot of our IT solutions, whether it's our CAD system or computer-aided dispatch system, all the way through our fire reporting systems, and trying to integrate all that with our federal partners in other states. So that's kind of in a nutshell what I do. I was asked to come and talk with you guys about our very recent wildfire risk assessment map. Just a little bit over a year ago, we were charged, a small team of us, to update our risk map. Originally, we did a first version of it in Wisconsin in 2009. That was updated in 2016. And then again, basically last year into this year, 2024-25. So that's kind of that in a nutshell. I'm going to try to share my screen. We're going to see how this all goes here. So we basically we're put together in a small group of us, maybe 6 or 7 of us, and we're asked to update our risk map. And along with that, I kind of want to put a little disclaimer out there. I don't know if it's as good of a zoom on your screen or not, but basically we created our risk map. It's intended solely for our internal wildfire management planning purposes. And it's really more of a strategic planning and strategic direction. Where is our fire program going, and what is our future need based on some landscape geospatial analysis and good hard data of fire risk and what those fuels and weather conditions are across our state. So that's kind of where it is. It's not to say that it doesn't have other implications or other uses for other folks out in the world, especially in the energy world. I can see some really big uses for it. But I'll speak to how we went about our analysis, what we got out of it, and kind of where we're at with things. We're just now sort of finalizing and not quite there yet, but we're starting to get to a final piece of a huge fire program review that we did internally that took a little bit more than a year's worth of time to kind of generally inform where we're going as the state and the Department of Natural Resources in our fire program. So this was an early part of that to help inform a lot of those decisions. So I kind of spoke to a little bit of what, the iterations of maps that we had from 2009, 2016, and 2024. Basically, we were put into place to inform that big program look and make sure that we have a good future strategy moving forward, and that we're reactive to future needs and future changes that occur across our landscape. So what we did is we updated our risk analysis, and that map is kind of the final product of that risk analysis based on different wildfire key risk factors like likelihood, intensity, and susceptibility. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit, but I just wanted to really kind of put that out there as to why we put it together, where we came from as far as that likelihood, intensity, susceptibility piece, and then what the purpose of that map is. And it's really it's identifying where our priority needs are in Wisconsin for things like resource allocation, ranger station, and other like facility allocation, some really big, long-term, big, programmatic decision-making things that we do. So that's kind of where things are at with that. Let's see if I can grab my next slide. So I just wanted to real quick show what that map looks like. This is like one of the versions of it. It's a red-green version. We do have another version that basically, for in case somebody's got challenges seeing the red and the greens from a colorblind spectrum standpoint, and we did that in more of a teal blue type color scheme. But just wanting to say, hey, here's the final product. This is what it looks like. So just putting that out so you can see what we're talking about. So what is wildfire in Wisconsin? I mean, a lot of times we're in the East. We don't really get a lot of big publicity, but we do have some pretty significant fire events. Some, I would say, moderate numbers. I think this year we're running right around 1,200 fires for just about 3,000 acres in Wisconsin, give or take. So that's kind of where we're at and where we come from. One of our big specialized pieces of equipment is a Type 4 engine with a flatbed trailer and a Type 5 tractor plow with water tanks on it. So this is our main piece of mechanized equipment that we're fighting fire with. A little bit about Wisconsin. We've got different areas of protection in Wisconsin. We've got the darker, colors here in the north, and a little bit in the central region is our intensive protection areas. We've got an extensive protection area kind of in this lighter shade, and then co-op areas in the rest of the state. So it's really about from the differences between intensive and extensive is about burning regulations and what time of year people are allowed to burn with or without a burn permit, some different things like that. In the co-op, we rely on protection. We turn that over to our town boards and their local fire departments for wildfire protection out there. We share jurisdiction in that cooperative parts of the state. You can think of those areas as more like agriculture, not quite as susceptible to large fires as we move through. And a lot of that's informed historically by some of our risk assessment maps. So a little bit about wildfire management and where GIS comes into play for us in Wisconsin. We do a lot of our incident management team, GIS specialist incident mapping. We have our WizBurn fire management dashboard. So we've putting a lot of our information out on in a experience builder Esri product, so that real time we're feeding that dashboard with real statistics and almost instantaneous as we're feeding it into our CAD system. The IFRS, the Individual Forest Fire Reporting System, is our CAD system that we use to track resources, make our ops plans, activate prescribed burns, kind of all things fire business internally. That's where we do our business. And then other things like communities at risk and other wildfire urban interface or wildland urban interface type activities, and how we set those priorities within those programs, prevention activities, those types of things are all kind of informed by our risk map. So again, looking at the two different versions of the map and kind of where we came from and where we started a little bit. So our charge is, a couple of years ago was to update the different maps that we have seen. And I just wanted to show kind of a iteration of what those updates looked like over time. You can kind of see the better technologies as we move through the generations and the decades, right? So a lot of what we did was based on our work internally as an agency in 2016 when we did a larger look at our fire risk analysis and did that by a landscape version and kind of looking at a lot of vegetation and fuels in Wisconsin. From there, we really tried to make science-based research, type decisions, and we relied heavily on some research papers that the USDA Forest Service has put out over time, especially this one here. I think we used a lot of the modeling, and this fire risk triangle kind of looks familiar in a lot of our analysis. So wanted to call that out of where we're coming from as we worked through it. So we took basically what that risk assessment framework was and applied it to our situation here in Wisconsin. So again, looking at the development of that risk map, it's really about what is risk and defining that risk. And from a wildfire risk, we took it straight out of the research papers that we were able to find on the topic historically, and keeping an eye in wildland fire and what those research papers are showing us. We're really coming down to likelihood, intensity, and susceptibility is how we defined risk as we've developed our map. So likelihood is basically that annual probability of a wildfire burning in a specific location. Intensity is maybe more like a measure of energy expected from a wildfire. And susceptibility is more like the propensity of a home or community to be damaged if a wildfire occurs. So think of it, how likely is it? How intense is it? And how susceptible are those things that are at risk? So basically, when we talk about what we were going to put into the inputs for this, we had some starts from our 2016 inputs, maybe about 5, 6 different layers that we were using. Things like soil drainage index, ecological subsections, vegetation from our WISC-LAND 2.0 data sets, patch size. So if a fire were to, spread without stopping, or no natural barriers or man-made barriers, what does that patch size look like? And then other improvements to infrastructure, structures, that kind of thing. So we basically looked at it and said, yeah, we liked all that, and we wanted to have a whole lot more based on some new features and new technologies that we were able to harness and put into this map. One of the biggest things that we did use was basically some fire behavior and fire probability modeling that came out of some of the national websites and work that we're familiar with in the wildland arena. Things like the Interagency Fuel Treatment Decision Support System. If you were to do a Google search of IFTDSS, you would see kind of what that is. And, there's a whole bunch of really cool tools out there with that. Now, with every tool, there's the caveats of, is it appropriate? Is it the right data set? Some things like that I'll maybe cover. But really just wanted to say these are the inputs that we had for our map. So when we looked at all those inputs, we had to try to formulate like which side of the triangle were those going to go on. And so we basically split those down into the likelihood, intensity, and susceptibility. And so things like susceptibility, you've got your improvements like structures or other infrastructure that would be at risk. Maybe the patch size also, including some of that susceptibility. With intensity, it was like, well, all about fire behavior, fire modeling, fuel, some of that type of stuff, right? The likelihood is more like our soil drainage index, ecological subsections. What is the probability that something's going to happen at a given point, and the vegetation or fuels inputs of all of that. So that's kind of how we put everything together to come up with where we're at. Really busy slide. Just know that we did a lot of analysis to come up with a really intricate model in how we, had our different algorithms to weight each of those inputs. So I had mentioned earlier about is the data good, and how does it pertain to your specific usage or need for it? So for example, the vegetation side of things for Wisconsin, this is the WISC-LAND 2.0 data set, spatially, visualized. And we basically took that data set and said, yep, we agree with it, but what's a hazard is different here, from a wildfire standpoint than just what the straight fuel model was or the vegetation type was. So we went in very specifically in the metadata and reclassified a lot of what we know is some pretty volatile fuels. And with that reclassification, we kind of ranked everything out, and that gave us a bit of a different look. Obviously, you can kind of see these red areas in Wisconsin. And those are our very volatile sandy soils, red pine, jack pine fuel types. This is probably one of the more beneficial slides as far as what we did and how we averaged everything out. So we took all of those layers and gave them a different weighting and how we are going to overlay all of that into our final risk map. So if we were to look at it, we can classify everything in that intensity, likelihood, and susceptibility piece. So with all of the fire behavior piece of things, we came into our near max 97th percentile weather, from a given day into what that near max fire behavior is going to be. And that was basically a 15% input into the eventual fuel input that we had. And then the likelihood is also kind of put into all of that stuff. So the drainage index, the sandier soils, that type of thing, ends up being about 5% of that whole map. And you can kind of go down through from there. Susceptibility being like patch size and the improvements, having their weighted averages into what was the final map. So a lot of thought, a lot of discussion, and a lot of ground truthing and looking at the data to make sure that it was a good representation of what we were doing. So that's basically what I've got for you. I could go into a whole lot more detail of kind of what things look like and how we reclassified down to the pixelated level and that type of thing. But suffice it to say, I know we did a lot of basic adjustments into our fuel data and a lot of our fire behavior data. From there, we made sure to send that out to a lot of our field foresters and said, hey, go take a look at where we're talking about and make sure that that what we're thinking in the data sets, that we're correct on that. And we had the opportunity to, basically go ahead and ground truth a lot of it. So that's kind of where things ended up for us, and kind of how it all ends. So that's the real quick and dirty of it. Hopefully that was good enough for you. I'm available for any questions on it, but
better than good enough. Appreciate that, Eric. And the depth you went into that was awesome. I know when you mentioned I know you met a couple of the states in the Midwest during that event in August, and I met you for the first time and was fairly unfamiliar with Department of Natural Resource generally and like the depth that you guys have. So I know you and Eric and your partner Jim also shared just like there's a ton of great resources that are coming out of these agencies. So I'd encourage the state energy offices and others on here to utilize those folks. I'll pause here. If there's any audience questions, feel free to jump in, raise your hand, chat, you know the deal. But otherwise, Kayla, I know you're on from Wisconsin and obviously the most familiar with Wisconsin other than maybe Eric and I know Carrie's not on, but any questions from you or any other comments to add, just being familiar with the state? I know you come from the emergency management perspective, so I'm all ears.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, so we are with our public-private partnership that we have with the utilities. Next year, we're going to be starting a wildfire series, essentially. So we're really like using Excel's model. They have a wildfire mitigation plan, and they do PSPS. What does that stand for? Public Safety Power Shutoffs. There we go. So they have a thanks. Public Safety Power Shutoff plan that we are looking at too. So I guess maybe in the light of this process that we're going to start going through with all the utilities, Eric, what might you say would be like a starting point for that? We're looking at an assessment, and forgive me, I cannot recall where it's from, but essentially it has maybe over 100 questions that utilities can go through to assess their wildfire preparedness. So we're looking at that to see what our weaknesses or our challenges, opportunities might be for the utilities. But yeah, sorry, long ramble. But what might you say would be a good starting point?
I think just getting the right folks at the right table at the right time. And I think the current time is there's no time like the present on a lot of that stuff. I think making sure that everybody's on the same page early and talking about the same vocabulary, the same sheet of music, so to speak, because some things that may work in places may not work as well in some places. One thing that jumped out at me was like the pre-treatment of poles ahead of a wildfire. That could be very challenging in Wisconsin, given the fire regime. So it's just little things like that, or what, talking about like public safety shutoffs, what conditions and how extreme would that have to be to really go into it? It's not that we shouldn't have a plan for it, but is that the first thing that we should jump to? And I don't know. I mean, from my standpoint, as a fire suppression person, I really try not to order things like that. I understand the other side of that coin, and having to mitigate folks that need the power for life safety type stuff. So it's getting that conversation started early, I guess, and making sure that everybody's on the same page.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. That was definitely one of the things that we had talked about, is having a common language to be able to understand each other when we're talking about wildfire. So yeah, thank you for validating that.
Hold on just one second, Peter. Thanks for that, Kayla, and letting me throw you on the spot there. Before we throw it over to Peter, Eric, there was a question in the chat from Sam from Minnesota. And I also had the same one as you were kind of going through. You mentioned there was a charge to update the map and kind of reassess your approach to wildfire risk mapping, excuse me. Was this mandated or funded through the legislature, or is this more of an internal mandate?
No, this is 100% internal to the Division of Forestry, and we're trying to be strategic in how we look through our entire division. So when the legislature comes to us and says, hey, we're thinking about XYZ, well, hey, we've got a plan for that. In 5 years, this is what we're thinking, or in 10 years, this is what we're thinking. So that's really more what it is more of a strategic planning, and kind of wiped the slate clean and said, if we could have the best thing, whether it's forestry or fire or whatever you want to kind of say in our Division of Forestry, what does that look like? And where do we need to change our organization to achieve that look, 5, 10, 15 years from now? So that's really where the impetus of it was in a normal strategic planning and a forward thinking type strategy. And it was funded internally based on that, and some of that internal investment of self-improvement for our agency.
Thanks for that. Peter, jump in.
I was just going to ask Eric, you probably are aware of this. Are you aware of the app Watch Duty?
Yeah.
Because it's just gone nationwide, and just the information you shared in your charts and stuff seems like y'all would be able to integrate with that very, very readily.
Yeah, actually, Peter, I wasn't aware that it had gone nationwide. I'm going to write that down because I've been watching for it to do so. So hopefully that was,
when I saw your presentation, I opened it up real quickly and it popped up, said, "We've now gone nationwide." So I thought I'd let you know. And you'll be happy to know there is a fire in Watch Duty listed for Wisconsin today. It's the Secret Squirrel Piles Burn. And it's it tells you it's a prescribed burn. Sorry, it was yesterday. It's a prescribed burn.
Yep. Sounds about right.
What a funny name. Well, thanks for
You gotta have fun in the job, right?
yeah, I mean, I'd like to think like the emergency security people like have a great sense of humor because things can be a little intense. And thanks for throwing that plug in, Peter. This might be a good time to transition over to Peter and his presentation. I'll get Camille to pull that up. But Eric, thanks so much for joining us. Feel free to stick around and some really interesting things going on in Wisconsin, really leaders in the GIS and mapping area, it seems.
Yeah, and we're definitely doing the best that we can, and it's a real short staff. I mean, literally, our GIS staff is just a couple people. So there's some definite rock stars that I work with every day. So I'm always appreciative of that. Sarah, throw my contact out. If anybody had any other further questions on it, then definitely can get those answered. So thanks for the time.
Yeah, no problem. We can certainly do some follow-up. Thanks. Peter, over to you. We'll hear about a little bit about advanced reconductoring.
Thank you very much. And I see you're driving, correct, Sarah?
Camille's on the driving.
Camille's driving. Okay. Thank you, Camille. So this is the intro, so we can go to the next slide. So I think some of you probably have seen some of this pitch before, but I'll try to do it where I can see what I'm doing here. So this is advanced conductors versus conventional steel conductors. In my left hand, this is a traditional ACSR conductor. My right hand is CTC Global's advanced conductor. Numerous differences, but the key differences are about 20 years ago, our founders came up with the idea of replacing the steel core that you see in the center of the steel conductor with carbon fiber. Basically, carbon fiber is much lighter, much stronger, and very significant to this discussion. It does not expand or expands very, very little when it gets hot. And I use to an untrained eye, the traditional conductor ACSR, aluminum conductor steel reinforced. The newer version of that is called ACSS, aluminum conductor steel supported. The for ACSR is a 1908 technology. ACSS is a 1970 technology. And we were the first carbon fiber core developed in about just over after 2000. And you kind of see basically what's significant, particularly for this discussion today. The carbon fiber slags a lot less to start with, and it sags dramatically less as it heats up. Less sag, obviously smaller and fewer towers, which helps with affordability. But more relevant now, less sag means less wildfire risk. There's two basic issues in wildfire. It's the spark risk, spark ignition risk from contact with vegetation or the ground. And then it's something that's gaining more visibility now is the newest of the ACSSs. They're rated to run 250 degrees centigrade. That's their operating temperature. But when they run that hot, the core gets even much hotter, about 350 degrees centigrade. And my generation, at least, I'm older than most of you, we all had to read Fahrenheit 451 when we were in high school or junior high. That's the title reference is the title of the auto ignition temperature paper. That works out to be about 230 centigrade. So your newest ACSSs run above the auto ignition temperature paper, and the core runs dramatically higher, about 100 degrees. Next slide, please. So what is advanced conductors it now enables advanced reconductoring, and from our perspective, advanced reconductoring, and I appreciate Megan's guidebook earlier, the shout out to reconductoring there as well. Basically, traditionally, at least in the U.S., majority of our work here, in fact, worldwide, people use our conductor and do advanced reconductoring for capacity. There's also a benefit on efficiency, lower line losses. That almost does not play in the U.S. at all. It plays internationally, doesn't play in the U.S. at all. And then, of course, the other one is the wildfire mitigation risk. But affordability is a big issue right now. There's basically 4 different ways to increase transmission capacity. You can build new transmission, you can rebuild existing transmission, or you can reconductor. When we say reconductor, all we're saying is you just basically take down the existing traditional steel core conductor, the ACSR, and you replace it with carbon fiber or other advanced conductor. Just a big background, there's probably 10 or so legitimate manufacturers of advanced conductors around the world. All use carbon fiber except for one. One uses a ceramic metal composite, and you'll see some example of it in a second there. But basically, reconductor is a quarter the cost of new lines, it's half the cost of a rebuild. And traditionally, most utilities prefer to do the rebuild because when they do rebuild, they build bigger, taller towers. That goes in their rate base. And obviously, that's how I say most utilities. IOUs, investor-owned utilities, who basically get a return on their capital. Next slide, please. So here's what we do in the United States. We have about 220 projects, 8,000 miles in the U.S., as you'll see below. Worldwide, we have about 125,000 miles, 1,500 projects, 300 utilities, 65 countries. The first projects were done in the U.S. The company's based in the U.S. It's clearly the opportunity to use our type of product and our competitors' products for advanced reconductoring is there's a huge opportunity in the U.S. It is gaining traction very much because of the IIJA. Many of you being from the State Energy Office, you're familiar with the GRIP programs. There's several of the advanced reconductoring GRIP programs that have survived. The one that we're heavily involved with is the Utah one. That's one of the larger ones, and hopefully that will be starting next year. And that will in itself dramatically change the scale of our presence in the U.S. Next slide, please. So here's an idea. Why is SAG important? Was for two reasons. One, as I mentioned earlier, the less SAG you have, the less likelihood you are to have any kind of vegetation content or ground contact. So there's not going to be a sparking, any type of ignition from sparking. But also the mere fact that it's higher up in the air, it stays higher up in the air, the lines don't get us. So it's kind of a reinforcing function. As the traditional conductor gets hot, if there's a fire underneath, even if the fire was not caused by the conductor, the temperature will then further heat up the line. It'll sag down further, and it'll further heat up and sag down further. Kind of a self-reinforcing function that actually does occur. The ACSS or the carbon fiber conductors simply they start much higher, much cooler, and they never get down into that fire zone. And you'll see, I gave a mention earlier that there was a advanced conductor that did not use carbon fiber. That's the red one. That's the ACCR. It sags more than the carbon fiber ones does, but not as much as either of the traditional steel core conductors. Next slide, please. So what's the other part, as I mentioned earlier, that's getting more and more interest now is the operating temperatures, because in order to get the capacity out of the newest ACSS, aluminum conductor steel supported lines, to match the carbon fiber, they've increased the temperature rating of these conductors. They're now rated to run up to 250 degrees centigrade. That's 482 degrees Fahrenheit. Our operating temperature is I think we have one of the highest of any of the carbon fiber conductors. Our operating temperature is 356 Fahrenheit or 180 degrees centigrade. It's what causes this? Well, as I talked about earlier, it's the steel core. It's two issues. The steel core, of course, when it gets hot, it sags more. But the steel is actually more resistive than the aluminum. So not much electricity goes through the steel, but enough does to where effectively the steel core in the traditional conductor in my left hand here, it acts like a toaster wire in the center of the conductor. Ironically, the basic way that heat transfer works, the coolest place on a conductor is the outer edge. And that's actually where the temperature rating takes place. So the temperature rating of a ACSS line is 250 degrees centigrade. That's literally going to be the coolest place on the conductor, because your steel core is going to get hotter, and there's no place for the heat to go except to go out to the edge of the conductor and be either radiated out or convected out with the additional heat. So our advanced conductor here, you'll see, I think you can probably see the little gold on it. You see it also on the screen. The gold is actually a high-tech fiberglass. It really has, its primary function is to ensure that no electricity goes down to carbon fiber. Carbon fiber is conductive, but we don't want any electricity to go. And unlike the steel conductor where there's no insulation around it, the electricity flows down it as well. But also, as you're probably well aware, fiberglass is not only a good electrical insulator, it's also a good thermal insulator. So even so, in our case, the operating temperature of the conductor is 180 degrees centigrade with a surge capacity up to 200 degrees centigrade. The hottest the core will ever get is maybe a little bit more over 190, basically 2 to 3 degrees per layer of 3 degrees of centigrade per layer of aluminum. And it's kind of a cumulative effect. It's the core itself gets really, really hot, and that actually adds to your potential wildfire risk. As you may be aware, and certainly some of the utilities are aware of, a lot of the things you do right now to mitigate wildfire risk, you have faster switches, faster breakers, where you can actually turn the power off before and sensors where you can turn the power off before the cable hits the ground if you have a conductor break. Well, that's not going to do any good if a 350-degree core hits the ground and hits the right pile of debris, leaves, or whatever else. You're going to get a fire anyhow. Next slide, please. So here's an example. This is an example in Nevada, 2009. So this was a transmission line, I think a 134 line. It may have been sub-transmission 69. Oh, it's right here. It says 120 kV. This fire was not started by the conductor. There was just a wildfire that blew in underneath. And as you can see, it burned down the wooden poles. It was a wooden pole transmission line. The conductor, our conductor ended up on the ACCC ended up on the ground, and all they had to do is put up new poles and put the conductor back up. It survived, very straightforward. So it shows you it's not just less chance of causing a fire, much less chance. It's much more survivable from a fire as well. Next slide, please. So when we talk about some of the things traditionally, this is probably the first really public discussion I'm going to do of this. Some of you have probably seen us do. Let's see if we can see it here. Does you can see the four little dots in there? That's fiber optic cable inside the carbon core. We've had this product out for a couple years. We call it InfoCore, and what it primarily does is it gives you the ability at any time in the life of the conductor, you can test whether the core is fine. Really is the condition of the core. We basically do the first test when it leaves the factory. You do it when it shows up because it gets to go a little bit further. We don't actually make the conductor. All we do is make the core. We sell the conductor to what we call our authorized manufacturing partners. They wrap the aluminum around it. So they get the core, they can verify its integrity. They can wrap the aluminum around it, verify its integrity, put it on the spools, verify the integrity, take it to the site where it's going to be installed, verify the integrity, put it up in the air, verify the integrity. And now, as of last year, anytime during the life of the conductor, you can in fact verify the integrity of the core. So we've taken it one step further. Rather than four small fiber optic lines inside of the conductor, we will be launching a product next year with a high temperature fiber optic, which now makes the core, the fiber optic, a sensor. Basically, it will tell you temperature and strain anywhere and other things anywhere along the line. It'll also be able to help utilities prove that whether the conductor did or did not cause the fire. It's basically it'll be real time, real live system. In fact, in some discussions with utilities, the only concern we've gotten is, man, you may be giving us more information than we really want, but it should be out there. It should be very interesting, particularly in areas in the West. And now, as Sarah mentioned earlier, the East Coast is now seeing more interest. I was particularly interested to see Eric's presentation because we don't do that much in Wisconsin. It was interesting to see how important wildfire mitigation, wildfire resilience is in Wisconsin. We think it's going to go all over the country. Next slide, please. And this is not wildfire mitigation. This is just resilience. We like to show this slide. This was a F5 tornado in Oklahoma. You don't see it in these particular pictures. There's larger views of it where you can see it. But what happened is the tornado went through. It picked up a standard 40-foot shipping container, flung the shipping container in the line. You can see on the left, all the aluminum splintered off, but the core stayed intact, which basically allowed the line to be spliced and put right back into service, and also helped overall the system stay intact because the fact that the core stayed intact helped all the towers stay up. So anyway, just thought that'd be interesting. That's the presentation, and happy to answer some questions.
Thanks for that, Peter. And some of those nuances. Look what I have right by Kimball and I.
Oh, there you go. We try to get them all over DC.
If anyone has gone to a NASEO meeting or familiar with Peter or Dave, they always have one of these. So you just have to ask and they'll give you one. But this thing's got some weight and I'm excited to kind of see some new things that are coming out. But I'll pause. Shane, jump in here. Shane joins us from DOE, and I know had the former life of a lineman, so he has a ton of great experience to add.
And an appropriate background too.
Yes, exactly.
Thanks. Thanks, Sarah. Hey, Peter, thank you so much for your presentation. And I am a lineman by trade, but I have been off the line crew for quite a while. So seeing some of this new technology is very interesting to me. So I'm going to geek out just a little bit and ask maybe some technical questions of you. One of the things that you mentioned was being able to come in and reconductor an original ACSR or ACSS or whatever it may be. Um, is the wire standardized as far your product, is it standardized as far as size wise compared to what's in the air today or what's being used on the market today? Or when a company was to go through and reconductor, they're going to have to change out all the shoes, all of the dampeners, all of the ancillary equipment that also goes on that conductor, or is it all will transfer over to your conductor?
It is standardized. It's standardized in two ways. We standardize based on weight because ours is lighter, considerably lighter. So you can put the same weight up, or you can do it on the same diameter. Same diameter will also weigh less. Uh, let me rephrase that. You can standardize on weight, and then you can actually put up a larger diameter conductor, or you can standardize just on the diameter as well. So all the hardware is the same except for one thing because we don't want to have the risk of the core being crushed. So I don't know if
Hmm.
you remember Chinese finger puppets, excuse me, finger traps, Chinese finger traps. That's the way we clamp. We don't use a clamp. And once our largest customer in the U.S., for example, is SoCal Edison, and they say now that they've done enough of our projects, they can actually do ours quicker because you remove one of the, as you're being a former lineman, you know there's two crimps usually involved. Well, you can replace one of the crimps. Now they actually say they actually measured some amount of seconds per line that they actually save.
Okay, great. Another thing you mentioned was obviously the heat, right? Which is a big deal. But on the flip side of that, what about the cold? How does the conductor hold up to the colder temperatures, say in the Northeast, where you don't have that in the West Coast as far as the sub-zero and all of those types of things?
We do. We actually have a product we'll actually put because we're there about typically ice loading.
Yes.
And so we actually have stronger cores and thicker cores we provide for northern climates. And there's a zirconium aluminum alloy that is also used, also typically used with traditional conductors as well. So we have plenty of work. We do our second largest customer in the U.S. and Canada are the Berkshire Hathaway utilities. We just involved in a large project with AltaLink in Calgary. And it was
Hmm.
interesting. We described that as a pre-conductoring project because they developed the project and then were ready to go and realized they needed more capacity. It was originally an ACSR project. So they said, we've already developed everything. We designed the towers. What can we do quickly to get the additional capacity? So even before they started the project, they actually put up our ACCC product.
That's great. That's great. I appreciate it. And again, I've probably got a bazillion more questions because I geek out on this stuff, but
And you're welcome to sing the Glenn Campbell song at the end of the,
yeah,
if
sure.
you'd like to.
Okay. Oh, the other question I had, wire size. So you talked about transmission. Do you have distribution size wire as well yet?
We've done everything all the way down to 11 kV. Our sweet spot is 69 to 345. Am I correct? I'm saying that right? 345.
Yeah, 345.
We have quite a bit in the 30 kV range, and we've done below that, and we're getting more and more interest. We've actually developed some cores and developing more for that market because as you can imagine, with the wildfire risk mitigation, there's more interest there with the SAG. So stay tuned. We'll be doing more, but we're already doing some and have done some.
Okay. Okay, and last question. With your product, going away from the steel to the composite, are utilities having to basically retool up on splicing equipment, different grips, all of that type of stuff as well?
It's some very minor stuff associated with the fact that there's the way we connect with the as I described it the collet we call it a collet housing, but generally I mean as you saw probably from the slide 90 almost 95% of our business international, and that's in places like we dominate in Bangladesh and Indonesia. We just opened a plant in India, not typically as well trained workforces as you have in the US, and they have no trouble with it. The biggest issue, I guess, and we've talked to customers about that, is you need emergency supplies. So they have traditionally
Hmm.
maintained lots of ACSR and ACSS, and we're working with them to make sure that they have plenty of conductor available for emergency situations as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Peter.
It's great. Appreciate the questions. I've never met Shane before this call, so this was
He's
not
awesome.
planted, but thank you.
Well, it sounds like you two could talk shop all day long, and I certainly was gathering different things from you guys just talking back and forth, some of the more nuances. So appreciate that. Um, Curious from the states out there, and Peter, thanks for that presentation. That was extremely detailed. Um, are folks familiar with reconductoring? Have they seen just covered conductors just to broaden the mix here? I know folks are using 410D to support some of those deployment and implementation. Just want to throw it out to the group. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I would say that we've had some utilities in Colorado that are using covered conductors, especially in the areas that are really forested. Like there's a municipal utility, Estes Park, that's using it, and then there's another place where they're doing a lot of river crossings using covered conductors. So yeah, really enjoy that presentation there, Peter. Thanks.
Well, thank you. So just if, obviously invite anybody to come out and visit us. We have about 50% of production is in Irvine at our home facility. Unfortunately, 80% of it is exported. I guess it's not a bad thing, but we prefer to sell more in the US. But if you ever come out and visit us, you will note that all of our conference rooms look like they are or sound like they are named after rivers. Well, they're not actually named after rivers, they're named after river crossings. Because that's typically our entry point because river crossing is very wide, river wide spans. That's where we get into a utility because they've had a product that, to quote the old Winston Churchill quote, democracy is the worst form of government except for every other one that's been tried. Well, when they have no other choice, initially they'll use us for something like a river crossing, and then they'll like the product and go from and continue to buy it.
Gotcha. Joshua, I see your hands raised. Jump in here.
Thanks, and sorry for not being able to be on camera. For Peter, I think in New England, we've heard a lot from our transmission owners about the ice loading and then the workforce development. And I heard what you were saying. I think you said it was California that they're finding that they can actually do things more quickly. Maybe more of a comment than a question. If there's real world data you can share along those lines with us as states, that might be something that's helpful for us to then turn around when our transmission owners are saying, we this is just going to slow. It's going to take way too long to train our workforce, or they won't have the skill set to do it. It's just having that real world information, I think, is really helpful to push back on that type of commentary.
Well, no, I appreciate that. And one thing I didn't highlight here earlier this summer, and some of the state energy offices are aware of this because they were involved. We did a joint venture with Google where if Google has a data center in an area or they're looking to put a data center in an area, and if transmission is constrained, Google will provide resources, not only funding to help pay for the advanced reconductoring, but they'll also pay for training and they'll also pay for engineering support for it. So that was, and I would say overall, we had a good turnout. We had, I think, 40 people, 40 responses to the RFI, and it was narrowed down to about 20 for the RFP. And the first projects will be announced probably pretty soon. We were surprised by how many utilities, I guess we shouldn't have been, weren't interested in free money. We were a little surprised by that. Then again, of course, how when I'm talking mostly about IOUs make their money by deploying capital, specifically in New England, as you're probably aware, because asset condition projects is very controversial. I understand right now. The utilities know how to make money. They've always known how to make money, and the way they make money is putting as much capital in the ground as they can. So we talked a lot about reconductoring. There's also another category of rebuilds. Utilities, and particularly the ones in New England, they dramatically prefer to do rebuilds because they can recapitalize their towers as well. So even so, rebuilds about twice the cost, and because it's been done for so long, that's their first pass. And New England is There's a couple utilities, I won't name them by name, but there's a couple utilities that take this to an extreme there. So, and we will follow up with you on your request. By coincidence, the person who we work with the most at SoCal Edison, we hired him away. He's now head of our field service. So he really liked the product, enjoyed doing it. So he's joined us recently.
Great. One of those transmission owners might be in my state. So
I suspect they are. I will only tell I'm be careful about telling this story. I would jokingly never in big groups tell this story, but I can tell it now because you'll see when I finish telling the story. I would jokingly say if you listen to certain of the New England utilities, they are having biblical scale woodpecker plagues. If you think about their preference for doing rebuilds and having to replace all their towers. At a public meeting, one of their transmission design or engineering executives said, "Yeah, part of our problem is we have a woodpecker infestation in this particular area." So they didn't quite describe it the way I described it, but the utility person themselves said one of the reasons we have to do this ASCII condition is we have a woodpecker infestation in our area. So you probably have heard that too, Joshua.
Thanks for that. Thanks for the question, Josh. We'll maybe transition over to the next speaker since we're coming up on the half hour. Peter, thanks so much for joining us. We'll be sure to share some of all the speakers' information. But in the meantime, I'll pass it over to John from the Colorado Energy Office.
Excellent. Great. Thank you, Sarah. And I'm at the Energy Office. I met a lot of folks on the call. Good to see folks here. And my current role is Grid Resilience Program Manager. So I manage the 401(d) funding for the state. But previously, I was the Electricity Markets and Transmission Policy Analyst, I worked a lot on trying to get new rights of way for transmission projects in the state. Kind of beat my head against the wall on that, and trying to get some GRIP applications. And I've got my ACCC example here beside me too. But I appreciate that Peter, because there's so much work that can be done to increase the capacity on the transmission grid by reconductoring with these ATTs as opposed to finding new rights of way. But I want to talk to you a little bit about what we're doing in Colorado in terms of our the grid resilience projects, and I've got a couple of projects I'm going to highlight. This project right here, this is a reconductoring project in Grand Lake, which is just on the backside of Rocky Mountain National Park. And they're doing a hotline. I guess that's probably just a traditional ACSR line, but really blew me away how quickly they're able to do the reconductoring, in terms, and they said that the neighbors only lost power for about 30 seconds when they reconducted this whole neighborhood, I think 3 different times. So pretty impressive. Next slide, please. So we've done something different for the most states. We have broken up our funding. We've gotten about I think 25 million in total of the 401(d) funding. We add in the state match from the first 3 years, and so we have it divided up between 4 programs. We've got grid hardening, advanced grid monitoring. And then we also, so that's half of our funding, and then half of our funding goes to microgrid. So microgrid planning and construction. There's also additional state funding that goes towards that. And I think one of the factors, kind of the unifying theme of all the projects is wildfires. We are a semi-arid state here in Colorado, and wildfires are getting bigger and more intense. It was just like 70 degrees a couple weeks ago, and that was getting me nervous. We've got a lot of geographic diversity too in terms of our projects. Next slide, please. So I manage the grid hardening and the advanced grid monitoring programs. So here I want to talk about this grid hardening. We've had about $9 million of our funding go. No, I think it was a little. Wait, 9 million. Yeah, about that. I think it might be a little less than 9 million. Go towards the grid hardening, but and I can drop in the chat. Here is a kind of a list of all of our projects if you're interested in diving into that a little bit more. But these have really focused on these main project areas here. So reconductoring of power lines, what we've been talking about here. The picture there, that's from Yampa Valley Electric Association. They're kind of based in Steamboat Springs and Craig, which is in the northwestern part of the state. You see there, that's a traditional ACSR conductor, but Estes Park, as I had mentioned, they're using the covered conductors, the tree conductors, and so they pretty neat. They were replacing just an old copper wire with these new conductors, and they've been working on a big line that goes up towards Wyoming. So this was able to replace a good chunk of that line. Also, undergrounding electrical equipment. I mean, this is such a huge interest, and we did a survey before we rolled out our 401(d) funding, and we, just to the munis and co-ops out there, and we found that there was hundreds of millions of dollars of interest in undergrounding. And so that's obviously a huge interest, although it's much more expensive. I live in the city of Fort Collins, where we decided in the 1970s to underground all of our distribution line, and we've got excellent reliability rates. We have, I can't remember the last time we've had a power outage here, and I've lived here 20 years. So then, the vegetation and fuel load management, that's a huge piece of every utility's budget. And it seems to me what I've learned is, we've been really prioritizing the small co-ops and munis for our funding, but it seems that a lot of their investment has gone towards their areas of growth, where they've had some population growth and they've had to put in new lines. And as a result, they have a lot of rural areas that have just been overlooked and been pretty low down on their priority list. And so they haven't had the opportunity to take care of either the reconductoring, the vegetation and fuel load management. And so, having this opportunity with the 401(d), they've really jumped on this. And so that's been neat to see. Automatic reclosers, that's been a big piece of it. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. And also non-expulsion fuses. That really has kind of surprised me. But there's a town of Glenwood Springs that's along the I-70 corridor that they have received a grant that's smaller in comparison to some of the other ones, but it's just to go around and take all those fuses, which, there's a fuse on the top of the distribution poles, not every one, but, a certain number and a sequence. And it's just like the fuses that you have in your house, except for instead of a switch flipping when it's tripped, there is an explosion that happens, and it overheats and there's these like hot oils and liquids that burst out, and so it opens the circuit. It doesn't allow the transfer of power, but it's not very good in a semi-arid area, and where there could be a lot of fuel load around that could get triggered. So they're just replacing that with non-expulsion fuses, something that just opens, and then they can re-close that when they need to. Next slide, please. So I appreciate that Peter mentioned the Duty Watch, the app, and I'm sorry, Watch Duty. app, and I'm glad to hear it's gone nationwide. I did a site visit to Yampa Valley Electric Association in Craig, Colorado, on August 6th of this year, and that was a really interesting time to be out there because there was a extreme drought happening in the northwestern corner of the state. It was a red flag warning day, and there was the Lee Fire that turned out to be the fourth largest fire in our state history at 139,000 acres. That was just one county south of there, and that fire exploded that day. It doubled in size, and there was three other fires that burst out. Two of them in the Yampa Valley service territory. They had to have two PSPS events. And meanwhile, the utility workers, they were driving me around, showing me the project. I felt like, hey guys, if there's something you need to get taken care of, just let me know. And so it was really interesting because these projects. So they kind of divided their allocation, and well, not allocation. They applied for two different projects under one title, and so they have this reconductoring project, and then they had a vegetation management project. So you can see there that the total grant was almost $1 million, and they're just about complete with that. And you look on the left side there, and there's those one of the distribution poles where they have put the automatic reclosers on. And so those are really neat because it really limits the time that it takes to close a trip on the system. So traditionally you get a trip on the system, and then the utility workers have to go out, have to inspect, figure out where it is, what happened. And this, maybe you have a branch or a tree, something hit the line and it trips it, and then it'll disconnect and then reconnect and then see if it works, and then it'll do that 3 times under normal conditions to see if maybe it was just a passing situation. Maybe whatever tripped the line might be gone, and they can reconnect it from their headquarters, from the distribution operator headquarters, without having to send somebody out into the field. They can also change the setting. So on the red flag days where it's fire weather, hot, windy conditions, they can make it so it only disconnects 1 time. And then this is lower down. The second picture there is of the same pole, and that's the kind of the brains, I guess, of the electronic recloser. But also you can see that there's a black wrap around the distribution pole there. And so my understanding is that if there's a fire, if that heats up, it melts. It's like maybe a plastic type of material, and it creates a hard fireproof surface around the pole. So pretty neat. Especially in an area like this where it's the grasslands, the high dry plains, and so most of the fires are grassland fires. And then there's a vegetation management. You can see there's an area, that third picture from the left is an area where they hadn't done any work, and you can see how it really needs a lot of cutting away. And on the right, that's an area where they had done the full mastication. And another thing that was interesting is they had to be really careful. That you can see there's some wet areas there. They were working in the lowlands near the creek beds because of this red flag warning day. They didn't want to be up on the hills and have their machinery hit a rock and start a fire. So they were trying to stay where it was wet. Next slide. We also have the advanced grid monitoring program, and so that has about half as much funding as the grid hardening program, mainly because the projects are less expensive. Doesn't mean they're less impactful though. So there's advanced vegetation management. There's a lot of use of drones and satellites. We've got tri-state generation and transmission. They're doing this huge advanced vegetation management project using satellite imagery, using overstory. And then this image is from a drone that Mountain Parks Electric it was using as well. So there's a bunch of utilities that are updating their SCADA systems. I know that's kind of like foundational for adding other DERs and other management approaches to the distribution system. So they're really excited about that. Smart meters. Boy, we're trying to find the smart meters that are BABA compliant. That's tricky. I know we've talked about that on other NASEO calls. But yeah, that's also foundational to make this happen, and grid modeling as well. Next slide. And this is my last slide, I believe. So I did a site visit to Mountain Parks Electric, and this is in Jackson and Grand counties, which is just north of Summit County, which is where all of the Breckenridge and Keystone, A Basin, all those ski areas are. Actually, this is at Winter Park ski area, or the town of Winter Park, because they had about almost $500,000 grants to do this drone inspection of their whole system. And so 23,000 distribution poles, and a lot of the damage to those poles happens on top, right? That's where it gets the most sun and water exposure. And so these, I understand now why they call drone pilots actually pilots. Because you can see there's a lot of skill involved, and those they have these cameras on there that are red, blue, green cameras, as well as infrared cameras, and they just go up and take up and down each of those 23,000 poles, 4 times on each one, taking lots of images. And so afterwards, not only do they have a list of all the issues that have been identified, which were identified first by AI and then reviewed by the linemen in front of a computer. But also, the linemen, they're uploading it to an app that they have. So when they go to on site, they can just pull up those images right away without having to get in a bucket truck and get up and look at it. So that's, a really neat approach to wildfire mitigation, because this is an area, Mountain Parks Electric, they were hit in 2020 by the East Troublesome Fire, which was the second biggest fire in our state's history. And last thing I'll just mention, it's interesting to see how different utilities take different approaches, because just on the other side of Rocky Mountain National Park from Mountain Parks is Estes Park, which I mentioned earlier is a municipal utility, and they are reconductoring their whole system with covered conductors. There's a lot of ponderosa pine trees, pretty dry around there. But it's much more expensive to have the covered conductors. But they're able to do that because they're a smaller utility. Whereas the cooperative, they're just doing these inspections as opposed to reconductoring with the covered conductors. But both with the approach of mitigating the wildfire risk. So. Thank you, Sarah. I just want to open up if there's any questions.
Yeah, thanks for that, John. Quite the depth of projects I think you covered. Selfishly, I'm happy to hear that some of the more rural and also so happens to be skiing areas are being protected, because I usually make my yearly pilgrimage out there to do those activities. But we'll open it up if anyone has any questions for John. Also appreciate some of those pictures, and the term non-expulsion fuses was new to me, and maybe that should be maybe an added technology or mitigation measure on that DOE resource. So putting that plug in now for Megan.
Yeah, my understanding is and those expulsion fuses are kind of the industry standard, and so a lot of utilities are trying to move away from those because of that risks that they present.
Mm-hmm. Well, if there's no questions, Oh,
Sarah,
go ahead.
I'll jump in real quick and just say, John, I appreciated one of the comments that you had about working in the wetland on a red flag warning day. That's just so near and dear to my heart as a wildland firefighter that we're doing those mitigation measures to prevent the next fire in the first place. So that was very well received, and I appreciate that comment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the wildfire mitigation experts obviously don't want to be the ones that are starting a fire. So that would be counterproductive.
It's a great presentation, John. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I think that was a lot of wonderful information. I can't wait to hear more about these projects as they, kind of become more mature and as you start measuring them. And, there's a lot of exciting investments have been going on across the country. So thanks for sharing yours.
Great. Thank you, Megan.
And I'm curious from other states. I know we have obviously states all over on the call that are represented here, but I see some Midwest and central states in particular. Since John was touching on 4101D, and I know a lot of folks have obviously done their program narrative, have states that maybe aren't in the West, more in the central Midwest, East, have they called out wildfire as like one of the top priorities as far as mitigating? Is it even mentioned? I'm just curious.
This is Sam from Minnesota. I didn't lead the 401D, but I reviewed some of the applications. And if I recall, wildfire was not a main risk. There were more windstorms and other risks that are more common. But we are starting to see some of the larger utilities develop their wildfire mitigation strategies, but they're still kind of in early stages.
Yeah, thanks for that, Sam. And I feel like we're also seeing as the threat is going west to east, also like wildfire mitigation plans. I know there's some out in the Midwest. I think Wisconsin, Exelon, you guys have Exelon territory, but
We don't have Exelon in
oh,
Wisconsin. Excel. I think you're thinking
Excel,
Excel.
thank you.
Yes. We share Excel has the western side of our state and a lot of Minnesota and Colorado. So operating
Right.
as Northern States Power in the upper Midwest. So yeah, and they are the one utility in Wisconsin at least that has a plan.
Wow. Yeah, and good
Although
plug for
others
everyone
are
right
working
now.
on it.
Oh, sorry, Megan.
No, go ahead.
No, I think you were saying others are continuing to work on them. I know PNL, for folks that aren't aware, they have a database they put out in the last couple of months that shows all the public wildfire mitigation plans. So can certainly follow up with those resources. But John, thank you so much for your presentation, your willingness to share. You seem to be an encyclopedia for many things, but this in particular, I know we chatted about how Eric called it out, but vegetation management isn't like the coolest or the sexiest, but it really is really important. So good call out there. Before I wrap up, I forgot to mention at the top of the hour, so I'll just mention it now. Just threw some resources in the chat. These are things that we recently became aware of. It's some resources from PNL. They have a super long, it is quite long, but there's some good resources in there. This current resource or this first link, and then for folks that aren't aware, NARUC is creating a larger wildfire workbook. The introduction and chapter 1 has been released. They're going to release subsequent chapters. I know states have been involved in that process. DOE has been engaged in that process. We have as well, and some other resources and things that might be helpful to look into in your free time. But seeing that we are at 3:30 here, just want to thank everyone for their time today. Feel free to follow up, or we'll follow up with some of the contact information and things like that. But look for a note from us soon on some of these resources. And we're looking to do the 4th webinar on legislation. So if anyone has any good case studies or things they want to cover, feel free to reach out. But those things will come out soon. Have a good day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Peter. Great to see you.
Thanks all.